Welcome back, my name's David. This is Cinema Flicks and Music Picks. I can barely remember the name of my own channel, but welcome on this Friday evening. We're going to be looking at, if you can't guess from the beanie, with War Child era Jethro Tull there, to the new Tull album, the Zealot Gene, which, as our hype sticker informs us, and we always keep our hype stickers, don't we kids, is the first Jethro Tull album in over 20 years, which is true if you don't count the Jethro Tull albums that we've had in the last 20 years. Because we've had, literally Thick as a Brick 2 released as Ian Anderson's Thick as a Brick 2, but it's the same band that play on this. It's Jethro Tull. So why is this a Tull album and that wasn't? Ask Ian. The sound's the same. It's not as if he's doing something sonically different on his solo career to these, but whatever. We know what it is. He knows what it is. Maybe somebody said to him, "You'll make a few more if you call it Jethro Tull again." Maybe it's because Martin Barr's had such success touring around as doing the hits. But anyway, we have here officially Jethro Tull. So not Ian Anderson's Jethro Tull, not anything like that. Not Ian Anderson and Jethro Tull, the orchestral album. But Ian Anderson, no. Jethro Tull. We're back to this is Jethro Tull. Is Ian and whoever else he decides is Jethro Tull. We're at A all over again. So if you watched this week's unboxing video with Ian Anderson, which may be the worst unboxing video of all time, I don't know if you've ever seen an unboxing video, Ian, but you need to kind of unbox the thing and then show it to people and say, "Look, buy it." I don't need to because I've bought it and I'm not trying to flog it. But you, Ian, need to show off the set. And you didn't. You just looked at yourself. You just held it up. That's really not an unboxing. That's a look at the packaging. So I'll do your job for you, you lazy, lazy Scotsman. And I'm a lazy, lazy Scotsman, so I know exactly what it's like. So here we are with the cover. More on that later. And it opens up to reveal something rather odd. Blu-ray gets a little protective sheet, and the CDs do not. Now, anybody that knows anything about physical media knows that CDs quite scratchable, Blu-rays nearly invincible. Your chances of scratching this are a lot less than scratching these, so they're protecting the wrong thing there. And secret compartment number 1 reveals the vinyl. Not in a polyline bag, just a standard black sleeve, but it has white vinyl. You see that? White vinyl. All three exactly the same, so we don't need to unsheath all three of them because they all look exactly like that. But let's have a look at just a few highlights of the book. So we open upon this, which is a very classic Tull kind of image, isn't it? It's very minstrel in the gallery, or more passion play maybe, yeah. So if that's passion play, then maybe that's a bit more minstrel in the gallery. But yeah, and then we've got what we've got here, the Zealot Gene, which is just an intro to the album from Ian. I'll turn my back on you and just show you the bill of that. Musicians, so it's Ian obviously, David Goodyear on bass, John O'Hara on keys, Florin O'Fell on guitar, Scott Hammond on drums, and Joe Paris James on track 11 guitar. Joe is going to be the guitar player going forward. Florian has now left Tull. He did so at the end of 2019 to become the boss of a recording studio. Timing wasn't great in that because recording studios at the start of 2020 were empty for some reason. I can't think why. But yeah, so however, it did mean that Florian could come back and do some work on this during lockdown. And there's Ian fluting away, having a toot on his flute, and lots of churchy imagery throughout this. There's the band in action. So although this has been released now and you'd assume it must be locked out, look at that picture of Ian holding his, look at that there, that's terrifying. Although this was recorded, or released, now, and you'd assume it must be a lockdown album, it's actually been worked on since 2017. So, long in the works. Track notes, which I haven't read yet because I didn't want them to alter my opinion of the album. Lyrics, which each one includes, get that a wee bit closer just as an example, but each one under the title includes a biblical passage for you to look up, which apparently influenced each track. It's the one that Ian was thinking of when he conceived the tracks. One of them, for example, is about the weekend and how the weekend flies, and I'm not really sure what. Did Jesus ever say that? Did Jesus ever go, Sunday again? Back to work in the morning, back to being a carpenter, no rest for the wicked. Jesus me. But and one's about, lassies in Swansea and how they go home with dirty knickers or something. I'm not sure that was in the Bible. There might have been dirty knickers, but it was never brought up. Anyway, it's the gospel according to Ian Anderson, which is what we're here for as Tull fans. Again, some lovely imagery of churches and Christ on the cross, which isn't me blaspheming, plenty of that later. An interview with Ian. Could have been on a disc, couldn't it? It would be nice to hear from him, but he's been down the rounds publicity-wise. That was by Tim Bonus in July of this year, and there's another nice cathedral shot, but wonderfully Ian includes the Bible references here, so you don't need to go and look up the Bible. Who's got time for that? If I wanted a Bible, I'd need to go and steal one from a hotel. Do they even have them in hotels anymore? Maybe that was a church I stayed at that night. Thought it was a hotel. I don't know. So yeah, Sad City Sisters says, which is the one about the whores in Swansea with their dirty knickers, is Ezekiel 25:17. No, it says Ezekiel 23:2-1. Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. Their breasts were depressed, and there bruised the teats of their virginity. May I suggest, Mr. Anderson, that we've moved on a wee bit since those times. I listened to the song before I read the Bible passage. I'm not much of a Bible reader, believe it or not. If I stepped into church, I think I'd go into flame. But Ian said that one thing he enjoys about the album's pre-reception is that people are saying, religious people are saying, this is disgraceful, he's mocking our religion, he's doing forever and a day. But long-term fans who go back to My God and Passion Play, Ronnie Pilgrim, are saying, oh God, he's finally joined the ranks of the masses, he's gone religious, and any rational people would be in the middle and just take it for what it is, music, which I did because I'm a rational person. So taking it without that horrible Bible reference where everybody's a whore because they want a good time, and just listen to that song in particular, which is Sad City Sisters, condemns young women for having a good night out and standing at a taxi rank drunk holding their shoes. You don't know what those girls have been up to, you know, they might just need to let off some steam. I suggest, Ian, that you get a 9 till 5 job that you hate, and then just payday comes, you count down the days and you want to blow off some steam. You've not had a night out in months, and you know, then just so happens that at that moment Ian Anderson passes by in a taxi and thinks you're a whore. Bit judgmental? Maybe. Definitely maybe. Anyway, and then we move on to original draft lyrics and chords from 2017 with full band backing track recordings in red. So again, the band were recording this 5 years ago nearly, which is nuts, absolutely nuts. But they've had time to tinker with it, obviously during lockdown. Ian's had time to add on tracks, to change tracks, to alter tracks, due to obviously a long gestation period anyway in 2018 and 19, and then lockdown for 2 years. And we end with a picture of guy's name. I think it's a young in-shape Chris Christopherson. Yeah, I'll look it up. If I find out his name, I'll put it in the comment section for you. And then we get to the very sexy end bit. And here is just another vinyl, which we don't need to pull out because it looks exactly the same. And then here is another bit of vinyl that we don't need to pull out because it looks exactly the same. But you do get a nice Slipmat. I like that one. I'm starting to get more and more of these backs because bands are more and more including. They've gone away from just giving you maybe a poster and a guitar pick or something, and they're starting to give you Slipmats with a vinyl come back. I think what was the last one I got? Yes, The Quest. That Yes box set up there came with a Slipmat, which I don't use very often because it's not the best Yes album. It's pretty bad. Did not need to be a double. Now, here endeth the lesson on the actual book. Oh no, excuse me, there is one important vital element still to be revealed, which is where we shall come to it. Limited edition numbered art print. See, there's only 5,000 of this box set, and this is number, well, somebody's writing so bad that I don't know if I've got number 1125 or 4,425, but either way I've got a box set. And the paper is not particularly good. This is very flimsy. Yeah, it's not lithograph quality. And on the back here, another lovely shot of Ian. Let's talk about the artwork for a second. Jethro Tull have had some great covers. I think personally some of the greatest covers, going back to, well, again, Passion Play, but that one that I'm wearing there, and even A's kind of cool in a digital way to kind of symbolise the change, and obviously Aqualung, Benefit's cool, even This Was is kind of cool in a, we're old but we're not kind of way, and Heavy Horses was cool. Yeah, Stormwatch was awesome. That's maybe my favourite when you see it, the full wrap around. That's an awesome cover. And then in 40 or 50 years later, depending on what album I just talked about, we go to this, which I don't know. There's just something about I don't particularly like the font, but the picture is very contrasty, which is in keeping with some of the lyrics, because it's very much about everything being a black, especially the title track. It's very much about everything being a black and white world with no in between, no moderation, as he sings on the Zealot gene. So the high contrast black and white kind of makes sense once you know that, but just as a piece of artwork, I don't know. that kind of, as I said to some people when the art was unleashed on Facebook, it looks a bit like, want to make leather daddies in your area? You know, do you want a spanking from daddy? Call now. You know, it's just got that kind of, I don't know, S&M look to it that I'm not sure I'm too keen on. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe you like it more than me, but even that to me is a better cover. And we go back to the theme that's always been kind of in the undercurrent of Ian is Jethro Tull, isn't he? You know, which I guess is true now that Martin, not that Martin was an original member, but you know, it really is just Ian says it's Jethro Tull, so it is. But why can't that be the cover? You know, why can't that be the actual cover? Come on, it doesn't take a design specialist to know that's better than this. Come on. However, don't judge a book by its cover, judge it by the contents. You've seen them literally. Let's talk about the metaphysical now, because the music itself, I've already told you my thoughts on Sad City Sisters. It's a bit misogynist, it's a bit hypocritical, because I don't think that being drunk in the streets on a Friday night is a particularly modern problem. You know, I mean, I'm closer to 40 than I'm 30, and you know, it was that way 20 years ago. And I know from knowing my rock history, about plenty of rock stars been arrested for affray in the streets and public urination and whatnot. So yeah, stones have been cast. So let he who is without sin, to go back to our Jesus freak nonsense. But track one is Mrs. Tibbetts, and I got worried. Mrs. Tibbetts worried me, so she did, because there's a keyboard on it. I know that I don't like keyboards, but it sounds like a keyboard from 1974, and not in a good kind of synthy way, you know, in an organ way. I mean, a really bad early keyboard, not a good synth. So yeah, it's not got a kind of proggy sound, it's just got this awful tinny keyboard sound, which I thought maybe was, for a few seconds, part of the, was there something thematic about it that I'm not getting? Went back and listened to it and thought, no, it's actually just a really bad choice of keyboards. The song itself's okay, you know. Jacob's Tales, great little acoustic harmonica led piece, which is too short. It's only about 2 minutes 13 seconds. But my favourite track, I'm not going to go through everything, my favourite track is track 3, Mine is the Mountain, and that's where I'm going to address what some people, certainly in the media, apart from the religious thing, are making the elephant in the room, which is Ian's, I don't know why I keep showing you this if you don't know who Ian Anderson, you know, this guy, Jethro, Ian's voice, on Mine is the Mountain. It's kind of reverb heavy. They're coming for me. My crimes have caught up with me at last. They're reverby and double tracked, and it sounds cool. I like it because he's singing as God, and some people are comparing it to God from Aqualung, my God from Aqualung. But to me, musically, it's got a lot more in common with, if you know it, Randy Newman's song, That's Why I Love Mankind, God's song, where God's singing about repelling and recoiling in horror at the foulness of man. And that's kind of the same theme. In fact, it's pretty much exactly the same theme. I think he had Randy Newman CDs out. That Ian's singing about here. It's about finding God in the desert, and then God just wants to be left alone. He's done. In God's song, the Randy Newman one, he's laughing at us and saying, I care more about a cactus or a yucca plant than I do about you. You know, you just entertain me by wandering around looking for me in the desert. Whereas Ian's God is lazy and just wants left alone. He made the world for you. If you're going to mess it up, he's not interested in your bullshit. So I like that. I like it because it's I don't want to say religious, because I don't think this is a religious album, as I said. I think it's theistic, and I think it lets you decide if it's atheistic, monotheistic, or anything else, artistic. But I think it allows you to kind of read it from whichever way you want. But I take it as Ian saying, doesn't matter if there's a God. If there is, what's he done for us lately? Which, that's good on him if that's the case. Because, as Stephen Fry said, what kind of God would allow children to get cancer? So, yeah, we don't want to end on that downer. The Zealot Gene, the title track, again, you can find a Bible passage to fit it, which he does in these notes here. But the song ultimately is about populism, Trumpism, and the lack of middle ground. So it's again about the black and white. The grayscale doesn't seem to exist anymore. Either they're for us or against us. You can't say that's a good idea. I haven't thought about that. You have to be instantly on board, or you have to be against something. And I'm instantly on board with that idea. But no, I like the intricacies of it. I mean, he goes into the notion quite extensively, and it's really hard to hear the lyrics and not just think it's about Trumpism and Johnson and whatnot. The rise of Brexit, whichever divisive issue led by entitled politicians you want to think of. So, you can pretty much add whatever one you want, but let's be honest, with him being a Brit, it's going to be Johnson, Trump, Brexit, and it's going to be that kind of stuff. He's probably not too up in his Polynesian politics. Shosanna Sleeping is one we all heard on Facebook recently. I keep saying Facebook for some reason, but it was released to YouTube. I don't know why I keep getting them mixed up when I'm on YouTube. But that's the first half of the record, and then we're going to side 2. My favourite there by far is The Betrayal of Joshua Knight, which is a lovely piano piece. It's great, it's terrific, and it's got a great heavy beat to it. And that's one thing on here that really deserves a lot of credit, is that Florian's guitars are really heavy, and at no point did I feel like, this needs Martin Barr back. At no point. And that's nothing to put Martin down, because if Martin was on here, I'm sure he'd be doing as good, better, maybe the album would be completely different anyway, whatever. But at no point did I feel like the guitars were letting me down and I needed something heavier. This album actually rocks pretty hard. There's some real classic Jethro Tull tracks on here, just musically. And talking about the vocals, as it was, Ian's voice is nowhere near as bad as the press are making out, or some spectators are making out. If you, like the hype sticker seems to think, haven't heard a Jethro Tull album since 2003's Christmas one, or before that with, Catfish Rising or something since the 90s, a real album that's not a Christmas album, then you, Roots and Branches, that kind of stuff, you'll notice a difference. But it's 25 years older. This guy's in his mid-70s. He's not 50, and he's certainly not the age he was in War Child, Heavy Horses, Aqualung, all the ones that we've already mentioned a few minutes. Was not the same age they was recording those ones. Songs from the Woods, he's not going to hit those notes, and he hasn't been able to for a long time. Even going back to Crest of the Knave, he's not been able to do that kind of stuff. So it's nothing new here. His voice is exactly what it needs to be for these songs. You can imagine in your head what it would sound like with a more soaring Ian Anderson vocal, but to me, he's writing songs that he can sing On the live records, it might stand out a lot more because you're comparing it naturally to the records, the original, because they're not rearranged very much, you know. So Ian singing the same arrangements, just brought down a bit. Yeah, it's going to stand out a lot more. But I think he's written around his vocal abilities, which are not that bad, by the way, I guess I said, very well on this record. And the only reason that I have issue with his vocals on this is the mixing, which I think is pretty poor on the whole album, but especially that opening track, Mrs. Tibbets. The album was engineered by Michael Nyandoro. It was recorded at Modern World Studio and then some home recordings. Producer Ian Anderson. Mastered by Nick Watson at Fluid Mastering. Artwork, concept and photography, Ian Anderson. Here's my idea. My face really large on the front and back. What should the art print be? My face really large. I'm just being facetious now. The Blu-ray though has got a 5.1 mix by Yako Yakshik from King Crimson, who does a lot of the box sets that we get. You know, the remake, the 50th anniversary series. It's now just kind of 40th anniversary. Whenever Stephen Wilson can find time to do the main album remixes, which might be a bit less now that Porcupine Tree are getting back together. He might need to get somebody else in. But Yako does the other discs, doesn't he? The live concerts and things. Yako does quite a few of those. So the 5.1 mix is good. I've had a listen to that on the old soundbar and stuff, and it sounded good. But the mix itself sometimes overpowers Ian's vocals. When your vocals are already being strained quite a bit, not that it's vocally strained, that it sounds like he's trying to hit notes that he can, but when you know that he's not going to be able to project very much, then you need to bring things down a little bit to accommodate for that, and this doesn't. So at times it feels like you want to go back to the mixing booth and just push the vocals up a little bit, you know, because Ian's voice just, there's a few times I had to go, what was the lyric? Because the guitar was so loud, or the drums were so loud, or the keys were so loud, I couldn't hear Ian's voice. I could hear it, but I couldn't make out clearly what he was singing. And I think that's a big part of the complaints about the vocals, is actually in the production, which I'm sorry, Ian, but that's you on production, so it's your fault, mate, if people are more criticising your voice, which is fine. As I said, I think your voice is absolutely fine for this record, but you just needed to make it a bit higher in the mix. That's all it needed. It didn't need to be altered. I don't think your voice is bad. It didn't need to be digitized. You don't need, one of Cher's vocal things, everything else was fine with it. Listen, Bob Dylan is my guy, so I'm used to voices changing over years, but it just needed to be a bit louder in the mix. But the guitars are heavy as hell. The flute is fantastic. And that seems like a redundant statement talking about a Jethro Tull album, doesn't it? But Ian really makes a kind of decision almost that if I can't sort, then my flutes will. Because the flute does a lot of the riffing, it does a lot of the high notes, and Ian's vocals may be somewhat diminished. Let's not be about the bush, but his flute playing and his savvy about how to use the flute as a stand-in for his voice have never been better. I think it's fantastic on this record, actually. And although I criticised the keys on Mrs. Tibbets, the piano playing elsewhere, Mine is the Mountain in particular, my favourite track by far, but on The Betrayal and Zealot Gene, Fisherman of Ephesus, fantastic. So everything production wise sounds great. An instrumental version of this album would be fantastic. or just Ian's vocals, just, you know, mixing desk up, you know, just that one knob just needed pushed up a little bit. That's all it needed. All it needed, man. So I don't know if that was Michael Nyandoro or it was Ian, but Ian's ultimately the producer, so he signs off on this, and it all comes out, you know, with his old mug on it. So he really does, you know, he is the one that we have to look at and say, you signed off on all this. I think this is the best pure album, the most Tull-like album in a long time, which obviously is true because of the fact that they've been released as Ian solo albums. But even taking that into account, I think this sounds more classic Tull, just musically, than Thick as a Brick 2 did, than Homo. I never remember the next part. Homo. I don't want to say the Homo album. You know the one I mean, from 2014. It sounds more classic Tull than that. It sounds more classic Tull than Catfish and those later 90s albums. Although I liked them, but they were going more bluesy and folky. This sounds more 70s Tull. So those ones were, it had the kind of Mark Knopfler thing going on, you know, from Crest of the Nave onwards through the 90s. This it sounds to me more like, and again I don't want to say this is the case, but it sounds like you can imagine that Ian has in mind that these albums, you know, Aqualung and Minstrel, you know, their benefit, they're all 50 plus years old now, and all soon to be 50, and he wanted to do another one in that style. Especially with the themes of, as he thinks a lot more than I do, to be honest, the religious themes of this. Then yeah, because although he says that Aqualung's not a concept album about religion, which I think is true, side 2 of it I think is a concept side, if you like, but I think certainly something like Parts of Passion playing, you know, the whole Ronnie Pilgrim story, and the general theme of religion and of Ian's kind of potentially a liking of the idea of religion, but not of the religious outlets, if you will, you know, the religious shops. But you know, his issues being, say, with the Church of England more than Protestantism, or his issues being with the Vatican more than Catholicism, that kind of thing. It fits in with that kind of Ian Anderson feel, which I guess is just a theme that explored more in the 70s. So it's like he decided that if I'm going back to that theme, I'm going to go back to that sound. And it's just, it's got that feel to it, that he's tried to make a Jethro Tull album. And maybe that's why he decided to call it Jethro Tull. Because maybe it's the first time he's set out completely to do, I'm going to make a Jethro Tull album, you know, and it's going to sound like a Jethro Tull album. And, you know, from A onwards, frequently he's, you know, started out with a Ian Anderson idea that's turned into Tull. So maybe it's only fitting in the 2000s and 2010s, some things that could be Tull ended up as Ian Anderson things, just to readdress the balance somewhat. So it's a bit confusing that the sequel to Thick as a Brick is an Ian Anderson album, you know, but I think this further muddies the waters as to what an Ian Anderson album is and what a Jethro Tull album is. But again, I think the ultimate answer that this album helps with is that it doesn't matter. If his Bonds is on the cover and he's writing, fluting and singing, then it's a Jethro Tull album. He can stick his name in the front if he wants. It'll probably sell a bit less, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, and maybe it's something to do with the ongoing reissue series as well. You know, that the brand itself is maybe a bit more marketable than it was, say, 10 years ago. So maybe that's part of it. But I think with the loyal fan base like Tull, that we'll just accept it anyway. You know, we've got Martin out there touring and playing some wonderful shows, and we've got Ian making a classic-esque Jethro Tull album with vocals that don't believe the people that are saying he can't sing. Just don't listen to them, just listen to this for yourself. And decide, because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that his voice is held up reasonably well for a guy of his age. If you haven't heard a Jethro Tull album since 1977, maybe not. But if you've heard anything from Crest of a Knave onwards, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the vocals. So again, this video's run very long, but when I get a new album that I'm quite excited about and I've listened to, and there's so much to show, and I do kind of ramble quite a bit. And then, you know, I like to respond to, you know, what people are saying, so vocals, and then go into my own thing about the art, and is it an Ian, is it a Jethro? So yeah, well, there's my epic for today. So I'm off to enjoy my Friday evening by finding a couple of whores and going to Swansea or Cardiff or wherever it was, getting pished, and then standing at a taxi rank with our shoes in hand and throwing our dirty knickers in the bin when we get home. So, see, it sounds a bit misogynist when you say it like that, doesn't it, Ian? But listen, thank you very much for watching as always. Stick a comment down if you think you like the album, if you didn't like the album, if I'm off course with the vocal stuff, if I'm wrong about the artwork and you think that this is actually a very sexy cover and that leather daddy turns you on, or if you just like my beanie. As always, take care of yourselves, and hey, let's be very careful out there. Love and mercy to you, my friends. Love and mercy.